All right, we can just go ahead and get started then. So good morning or good afternoon or whatever time it is where you are. Welcome to Cracking the Code of Google's PMax. So Performance Max, driving success for hospitality properties. So our presenters, we'll just introduce very quickly. I'm Alex Scharf. I am our search marketing supervisor. We also have Alex Horrocks, who is our senior search marketing strategist, and Patrick Buckner, who is also a senior search marketing strategist. So all of us are within our search team here at G-Commerce, and we're just going to cover performance specs. So we'll start with Alex Horrocks.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and hop into the background with what Performance Max is. For a very high level, it is a separate campaign type in Google Ads. It allows you to show your ads across all major Google channels all in one place. Some of those channels include search, display, YouTube, Gmail, Discovery, and Maps. It is a much more hands-off campaign type because of the advertiser inputs that you put into it. What it ends up doing is it automatically generates assets to showcase your ads at the end of it. It is a campaign type with limited reporting, which we will get into more details on that. For now, these are just some of the reports that we currently have that are limited. As you can see, reading off of what type of reports we have there on that list there. And we'll have more reporting options over time, or Google will continue to roll out more reports as it becomes more sophisticated. And we'll go throughout these through the presentation. And so just really briefly, the way it works is that PMax leverages Google's AI to optimize ad delivery across channels. It identifies top performing combinations. It reaches, and in order to reach the most amount of users as possible, and in the most effective way possible. The way it works is you provide creative assets, your goals, the signals and which type of audiences you tend to target. Tells Google who you're trying to reach, essentially. Google's AI then runs different combinations across multiple channels. As we mentioned, there's multiple different types of channels to see which one performs the best. And then as it continues to run, the system adjusts in real time. And it uses different types of behavior within your campaigns like location, as we mentioned, audience signals, and it does a little bit of more fine tuning in order to get the maximum results and reach the right people. And so this will just be a brief overview of what's going to be showing the differences between the two campaign types with paid search and performance max. These are the four things we'll be covering, which are ad targeting, reporting, campaign types and channels, and then asset creations. So starting off with ad targeting, paid search allows a lot more precise control. You can tell Google which keywords you want to target and bid on, and you also have the ability to see which keywords are triggering but are not bidding on in a report that's called Search Terms Report, and we'll get to that here in a moment. And then you can also negate keywords. When you negate keywords, you can negate as many keywords as you can or that you need. It's essentially a way of saying you can exclude them out of your keyword pool. And it has a lot less restrictions as in terms of PMax. You can go as far as the account level, the campaign level, the ad group level. And with PMax, you give Google a set of search themes instead of keywords. And this is similar to keywords, but it's not to be confused with keyword targeting. When you provide Google your ideal hotel non-branded or branded terms for search themes, Google uses that data to discover customers who are more likely to convert based on those specific search themes that you provide. And they are also used alongside different information about your business and goals to help deliver better results that way. When setting up PMax campaigns, the best advice we can give you is that you provide as many search themes as possible, and as well as making sure that are relevant as possible to your hotel. PMax has recently also included some negative keyword targeting features in its campaign, but it only goes as far as the campaign level. And you're only able to negate up to 100 keywords max. Right now, we know that this is currently the feature that it uses. It could change over time, but right now this is what's remaining for keyword targeting. With reporting, the difference in paid search and PMax is that in paid search, the search terms you can use this report to bid or negate certain keywords that are relevant or irrelevant to your hotel. You can negate keywords as many as you need with little or no restrictions, as we kind of talked about before. PMax, you also have search term reports, and you also have something alongside it called placement insights. And then you have a few other reports that are starting to roll out. For example, channel performance. This is something we haven't currently seen across all of our portfolio, but it will eventually roll out. What it basically does is it shows you the channels within PMax that your campaigns are targeting if you're using Performance Max. The one thing for sure, though, is that advertisers have requested a lot more transparency when it comes to reporting on PMax. And so over time, we might expect to see more control in these campaigns, just given the type of reports that continue to roll out. The campaign types and channels between these two are a bit different also. As we mentioned before, it's pretty self-explanatory. Paid search just targets Google search, where it's got the regular text. PMax serves on display, YouTube, Gmail, Discovery, and Maps, so it has different ad formats in those. And then asset creations is also different. The assets that you need for paid search is a lot more headlines and text, since it only serves on search as a channel. Performance Max also requires certain forms of text, but it needs additional assets to perform on other channels. And some of those examples include images, videos, logos. And keep in mind, if you're not providing video assets, PMax will auto-generate those video assets for you. So make sure that if you are going to create those, that they're of good quality. Otherwise, PMax will create them for you. But just make sure to keep an eye on those if you do end up not creating videos. You can also opt out of that option, but just as a heads up. And now I'll pass it off to Patrick to go over the pros and cons.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, there's a lot of great pros for PMax, and there are also a handful of cons. So I'm just going to go through some of those. So with PMax, one of the biggest pros is that it can expose you to new markets that you could be missing in your traditional search campaigns. Because like Alex was saying, PMax uses audience signals rather than keyword targeting. It can get you in front of the right audience at the right time, and you're not, fully constrained by the intent-driven keyword searches that you are with traditional search. So it can get you in front of potential new guests across different channels. PMax can assist in creating full funnel marketing by being present in multiple channels, right? So because you're in the Discover feed, the display network, YouTube, Gmail, Maps, like all of these and search, all these different places, each channel can kind of represent a separate but cohesive step in the user journey, and you can be present for potentially all of those steps. PMax allows you to limit brand-related searches for your campaigns and select to focus on acquiring new users. And that can help you really build brand awareness and reach new audiences. Or alternatively, you can choose to prioritize returning users and ensure visibility throughout the entire journey. PMax can also help fill the gap between branded and non-branded campaigns, right? So because PMax relies on those search themes and audience signals rather than the keywords like we were talking about, you can be present for both branded and non-branded searches. PMax runs on Google's machine learning. So there's really no denying the power of Google's AI, which is just going to continue to improve over time. One of the other great pros about PMax is it can be a really cost-effective way to increase your impressions and boost visibility. Because you're in these new channels like display, you can see really big increases in the overall number of impressions at a really low CPC. PMax is also still in the process of evolving, and the settings and audience signals and all of these factors that we've talked about, they're really just going to continue to improve as the campaign type improves. And then, as I touched on earlier, PMax can really increase overall account impressions, clicks, bookings, and even revenue. So this is probably the biggest pro. We did a case study that we can link that revealed really an overall lift to accounts in many of these key metrics after launching Performance Max campaigns. There are some cons to PMax. It has some limitations, such as that it requires a fairly large budget. So in order to optimize all of these ads across so many channels, PMax really does need a consistently fairly high budget for several months. As Alex touched on, there's limited reporting options available for now. A lot of these metrics that we like to look at and kind of optimize are really only available at the campaign level. I think, as Alex mentioned, we'll probably see some expansion of that as Google rolls out some new reports. You do have limited control over your ads and campaigns. So this is maybe the biggest con is because PMax is designed to maximize for conversions at any cost. Performance Max requires you to give up a lot of the control over your campaign, like the channels where you're going to show up, the targeting options, the bid modifiers, even how your messaging is delivered. You still have control over the messaging that you input, but not over exactly how that messaging is delivered. And then also PMax can potentially cause some ad overlap, right? So Google prioritizes Performance Max campaigns in almost every case. And so PMax may overshadow your existing phrase match, keywords, display, video, shopping ads, and you could see a decrease in your existing campaigns in the long run. So then I'm going to also go through some of the best practices with PMax as well. So to ensure that we have a successful Performance Max campaign, it's really critical to follow these best practices. Starting with the budget, like I mentioned, does require a fairly high budget. We really recommend starting with a minimum of $45 a day and begin testing that and potentially increase budget gradually in order to mitigate the risks for inefficient spending. You also want to have at least 3 months of Google Ads data in your account. So making sure that your account has at least 30 conversions and 90 days of data will really help drive the automation of PMax and allow it to help find those high converting audiences. We also still really recommend prioritizing your brand campaigns. You should run PMax alongside your other campaigns, but prioritize branded search first. PMax is more effective than non-branded searches a lot of times, but it really can't replace the strong intent-driven searches that come with brand campaigns. And then you should always try to have some first-party data to strengthen your audience signals. So using customer match lists and run-of-site audiences to help Google identify your best audiences, it'll really have a positive impact on targeting accuracy. So then when it comes to asset recommendations, PMax uses a group of assets, which is a little different than the traditional search campaigns, because it's set to kind of dynamically combine assets across Google's different channels. It's important to really have a wide range of creative, polished, up-to-date visuals, video, and text. So with your text assets, copy really shouldn't be repeated across different asset types, as they'll often appear next to each other within the ad, and you're at risk for kind of some overlap there. A headline asset and a long headline asset could show up next to each other, so you want to make sure that they're unique. With image assets, just like with all images, it's really important that you have up-to-date, appealing imagery that has a variety of sizes for different placements. And then with videos, it's not required, but custom video assets can really increase campaign performance. Videos must be uploaded directly to YouTube. They can be public or they can be unlisted, but they cannot be private, and they are required to be uploaded into YouTube. If none of those assets are uploaded, Google is going to automatically create those video assets from your image assets. So it's going to take your text and your images, and it's going to create video assets from those, like Alex was mentioning. And it's good to have different orientations as well on your videos, just like your images, for different placements across different devices. And then there's also automatically created assets within PMax. We would recommend disabling those, as they typically don't perform at the same level as custom assets. And then so just kind of diving into like a handful of frequently asked questions around PMax. One of them is, how long does it take for PMax to ramp up? So we would say most PMax campaigns require 2 to 3 weeks of learning time before performance really starts to stabilize. Can I control where my PMax ads appear? Not directly. So PMax placements are automated across Google's channels, but the audience signals and asset quality will help kind of guide that. Will launching PMax affect my existing campaigns? That's a possibility, right? So we did talk about some of that overlap and some potential downsides to that. It's possible that it can have an impact. So it's really important to monitor performance and use campaign level exclusions if you need. Can I use PMax for specific promotions or seasonal offers? Yes, PMax can support short-term offers, but campaigns do need time to learn. So it's really important to plan ahead when using seasonal pushes, and particularly wanting to run those for a little bit longer. How long should I test PMax before deciding to continue with the campaign? We recommend that you give it at least 3 months, and you're sure to monitor the campaign and the account-wide performance regularly to avoid any inefficient spend. 3 months can really kind of account for that seasonality or algorithm change or demand fluctuations. And then I'm going to pass it back to Alex S. to go through some of our campaign performance insights.
Thank you, Patrick. So we can just get into actual performance that we've seen. We know how to set up a campaign. We know what the purpose is. So we're just going to look at, like, within our portfolio, how some things have done. So last year is when we started to use Performance Max. So we weren't using it for the entire year. But you can see just some of the initial performance here. In particular, with these performances, we want to really focus on the return on ad spend, or the ROAS. So like in this case, we're seeing $42 ROAS. So of course, this does mean that there's probably some room to increase our budget here, but in general, this is just a phenomenal return. And then, compared to this year, the first 6 months of the year, we're seeing major increases already. So this is kind of improving over time with PMax as PMax continues to evolve and the algorithm gets better and things like that. So again, looking at the ROAS, we're up to over $100 in ROAS. That's just incredible. And then same with the purchase rate. We're seeing huge increases year over year. It's also worth noting that within our portfolio, we are running more PMax campaigns this year across a wider variety of clients. But regardless, these numbers are just fantastic. So it is also important to note, though, that PMax is not going to work for every single hotel or every single business. Your market, your competition, the audience signals that you're providing with the campaign, and really everything else that we've been covering in this presentation. These are all going to make a difference of how effective Performance Max is to you. So we just want to call out a couple success stories and failures from our particular clients. So in both of these cases, we have campaigns that are doing really well. Just in the first 3 months during that learning period, again, just focusing on the ROAS, we're seeing like a 32 and a 21. That's just really good. Obviously, this is going to depend on all of the different things that we mentioned, but I can tell you that compared to their normal search campaigns, these are on par or much higher. But conversely, we have seen a couple failures as well. So neither of these campaigns were able to generate any return on ad spend. There was revenue coming in, it just wasn't enough to match the cost. So if you're also looking at the dates here, you can see that these were some older campaigns. So this is again just supporting the idea that PMax is getting better with time. But I also wanted to note that, these are clients that weren't necessarily following all of our best practices. So the hotel in New Orleans, for example, we didn't even give them that full 3 months testing period because the performance was so detrimental to the entire account that we couldn't even justify going through the full testing period. And they were a client that did not have any first party data. So their audience signals were very limited. So this just kind of proves how important it is to really get that data and really feed the algorithm with everything that it needs to run efficiently. So we also wanted to look at the impact of Performance Max within your search campaigns and within your account as a whole. So, just the raw performance data doesn't always tell the full story. So this is going into that case study that Patrick mentioned, which is linked at the bottom there, and it will be sent out along with the recording. This slide deck and the recording will be sent out afterwards. So you can find that in there. So we completed that case study across 9 of our clients. These are all clients that launched Performance Max alongside existing paid search campaigns within Google Ads. So we wanted to look at, how effective is PMax compared to our existing campaigns? What impact does PMax have on those campaigns? And how does PMax affect total website performance? So going into the highlights, our first step was looking at performance versus a traditional search campaign. So we were just trying to figure out, where is that marketing budget actually going to be most effective? So overall, we found that Performance Max struggles to match branded search performance, as Patrick mentioned. But again, it is a little bit more effective than non-branded search campaigns or market campaigns. So we're also seeing lower CPCs and lower cost per booking with Performance Max, making it a pretty efficient use of budget. So this is just a little bit more detail on that summary. So versus branded search on the left there, again, better cost efficiency. So lower CPCs and lower cost per bookings, but we were seeing worse conversion metrics with Performance Max. So fewer bookings, lower booking rate, and less total revenue. And that'll be that first picture on the bottom there. You can just see like Performance Max tended to perform worse in terms of clicks, for example. So versus non-branded search on the right, Performance Max campaigns were better in almost every single metric. The only exception is that Performance Max had lower click-through rates, CTR, and that really makes sense just considering the wide variety of advertising channels that Performance Max is using. So search campaigns are just always going to have a little bit better CTR than other types of advertising. So because PMax is, across all the different channels, that makes perfect sense. But it also suggests that Performance Max campaigns are reaching guests who are probably a little bit further into the conversion funnel than a non-branded search campaign. So in comparison, Performance Max or search campaign, which should I run? Really, if you want like a high level awareness, a non-branded search campaign would probably be better, just because we're seeing, these kind of metrics that just suggest that they're a little bit further out in the conversion funnel on search. So we also wanted to see how is this going to impact the existing paid search campaigns? If there's that overlap that was mentioned, between different campaigns or just in general, is this adding to our count or is it just redistributing where people are booking from? So we compared some period over period data just to see what kind of effect Performance Max had on our search campaigns. So in general, after launching Performance Max, we did see an uplifting effect on our existing paid search campaigns. So branded search campaigns, unfortunately, did see some decreases to visibility, and there were some decreases to the non-branded bookings, but overall account level performance did seem to improve across the board. So at the account level, we were seeing a boost in paid search account performance after launching Performance Max. For almost all of the properties that we assessed in this case study, we saw improvements to clicks, impressions, bookings, booking rate, revenue, and ROAS. And this was all with little to no effect in cost per booking. So that kind of efficiency was the same. We were seeing those same decreases to CTR, but again, that makes sense. And the only really wild card was CPC, where it really seemed to vary from property to property. So in terms of branded search, after launching PMax, branded did see lower visibility again. So lower clicks, lower impressions, and this seemed to be probably tied to increasing CPCs, which is kind of interesting. Our theory is that there was a little bit more competition there, just causing the brand term CPCs to go up a little bit. We were seeing no change to CTR though, and booking rate did still improve after launching PMax, which was really interesting. So despite the decreased visibility, we still were seeing higher bookings, higher revenue and ROAS. So it did seem to offset all of the negative changes. And then on non-branded search, there was a bit of a negative effect. And so we are seeing that, going back to what Patrick mentioned about prioritizing brand terms, it really seems like, PMax is taking a little bit from non-branded, but that's okay. It's got different purposes. So even though CTR did increase on market terms after launching PMax, we were seeing worse CPC, lower bookings, worse cost per booking rate, or lower cost per booking and lower booking rate, and then decreased revenue and ROAS as well. But when it comes to visibility, so coming back to that high level awareness kind of goal, about half of our properties saw increases to clicks and impressions, and then half saw decreases. So again, this is just kind of dependent on your individual property and the different signals you have in your account and all of those different factors. So we also wanted to look at just total website performance. So at the property level, was PMax having any larger impact on brand awareness or revenue production? Overall, we didn't really see any strong evidence that PMax has a negative or a positive effect. Most of the metrics were incredibly varied among the different clients that we have, so we can't make any strong conclusions there. But we did want to get into some, a little bit more detail here. So just looking at those bottom pictures there, you can see that these are a lot more varied across the different metrics than we saw for the search campaigns. So we wanted to compare performance both year over year and period over period, just to kind of, understand the full picture a little bit more. So looking at year over year, it really seems to rely on the unique characteristics of each property, if PMax is effective or not. We were seeing some trends, such as PMax can decrease the sessions and session engagement rate, but we were seeing general trends of improvements to revenue and user booking rate. So this does suggest, again, that it's a little bit lower in the funnel. So we're not getting as many just awareness, visibility sessions, but we're getting a lot more actual booking intent users. Excuse me. So period over period, we were also seeing it really mixed across the different properties. But again, just general trends. After launching PMax, we did see increased website traffic and growth. So more new users, more total users, and more sessions, which is interesting that it had an effect period over period that was almost directly opposite to what we saw year over year. But we did see a negative impact on engagement and production. So lower engagement rate and lower bookings. But I think just the difference between year over year and period over period also suggests that this is just so dependent on your individual property and your specific needs and just the different kind of things that you're feeding into this campaign to make sure that it's working properly. So we also want to talk about some new features coming to PMax. As alluded to multiple times, we've got reporting things coming up and just all kinds of new features. And this is part of the reason that the Performance Max performance continues to increase over time. So the first thing that we want to discuss, Alex did mention this, but negative keywords. So adding these negative keywords, it does prevent ads from showing for irrelevant searches. So this will improve the quality of your ad traffic. So this could help with CTR, CPC, conversions, conversion rate, and ROAS. We have done some experimentation with negative keywords at G-commerce, and the results are a little bit mixed, but it's just good to know that this is an option. So it is something that you can always play around with. So one of the new reports that we have as well is search terms. This is something that does already exist for search campaigns. Essentially, it's just a list of all of the search queries that triggered your ads, and then also the performance associated with each of those queries. So the query is just whatever a user will like type into the search bar to get the results page. So having this information makes it easy to discover what your guests are actually searching for, create assets that really resonate with what people are searching for in your target guest, and it'll also help you identify those opportunities to apply negative keywords and stop showing up for irrelevant queries. We also have some more details on channel coming in. Again, we personally haven't seen this, but I know that it's still rolling out. So it just depends on your account. Some people have just been included earlier than others. So you can view user engagement and performance across different metrics across the different channels. So you can use this data to find your highest performing channels, deep dive into your conversion funnel, and really see where your budget is going. This could also be used as a tool to optimize your existing advertising as well. If you're seeing that Performance Max is doing really well in one specific channel, you could use those learnings and apply it to your traditional advertising campaigns. Another thing is asset and asset group reporting. So this is just your specific ad elements. So your headlines, your descriptions, your images, all of that, all of your assets. So seeing what's driving your performance, identifying areas for improvement. This is also a good way to test new assets. Up until this point, we haven't been able to tell which headlines, for example, are doing the best. So if we ever wanted to replace something or try to improve performance, it wasn't really easy to do that because we weren't sure what was actually driving performance. So that's something that I'm personally very excited for, is just the ability to test more now that we're having all of this data on like assets and channels and all that. And of course, there's always more to come. Performance Max is still evolving. Even the things that have been rolled out, they're still rolling out. So we're seeing new things every single day. Everything continues to improve over time, even just little tiny algorithm changes that wouldn't really make the news. It's just improving, and we're seeing just increased success every single day with PMax. So we are going to jump into a Q&A section, but before I actually address those questions, we want to share a couple QR codes. So on the left here, sign up for Insights. G-Commerce has a blog. So if you want to be notified of new webinars or blog posts or ebooks or anything that we're posting, that'll be on the left. And then if you want to reach out to us directly, go ahead and follow the QR code on the right. We'll leave this up during the Q&A section just so you have a chance to sign up. So jumping into the Q&A. So what is the maximum budget for Performance Max? So we established that we do have a minimum recommendation of 45 days of, or $45 of media spend per day. We don't really have a maximum at this point. It's a lot like a normal search campaign where you kind of just have to test it out and feel it out for your specific campaign and your specific client. So we just recommend that if you are making those kind of changes, just ramp up slowly and make sure that you're not having any detrimental effects to your account. Can I run multiple PMax campaigns? This is technically possible, but we don't really recommend it. PMax, it's really hard to get the specific targeting that you want with PMax just because you are supposed to give up a lot of control. So you end up seeing a lot of overlap, or, there are different PMax is just very good at finding the correct audience. So instead of running multiple campaigns, we just recommend setting up a couple different asset groups. You can also include different audience signals and search themes for each asset group. So that'll just make sure that you're showing multiple different ad variations and things like that. So you can target that way, but without running into the risk of competing against yourself. Should we include different video formats, horizontal versus vertical, and do these need to be uploaded to YouTube as well? I'm not actually sure about this. I know that it is a good idea to have like horizontal and vertical. I know that the automatically created videos will be both formats, but I believe that the videos are primarily used for YouTube ads. So I think that, I don't know, Alex or Patrick, are you familiar?
Yeah, I believe that we do need to have all videos currently uploaded to YouTube. They can be unlisted on your YouTube channel if you don't want them publicly facing, or you can have them as public videos, but they do have to be uploaded through YouTube. And yeah, like Alex said, it's a good idea to have both vertical and horizontal formats so you can be, optimized for both kind of mobile or desktop.
One thing that I did forget to mention earlier, we do have a limit on like all of the different assets that we have. You can only have so many. And for videos, we can only add 5, I believe. So, do keep that in mind if you are adding all of those different variations. Don't go a little too overboard because then you might not have unique video assets. Yeah, so someone also responded, I've seen a recommendation to increase ad strength, and that's for adding video formats in different videos in different orientations. Sorry. That is a good point. I have seen that as well. So I guess that's another good point to mention with ad strength and performance max. It does work a little bit differently than it does in like search campaigns. It will just kind of give you different suggestions, such as adding images in different ratios, or like you mentioned, adding different video formats, or adding more headlines or things like this. So it's just really, coming back to that, key. I think the key point of this entire presentation is just flesh out everything you can. The more data that you put into your PMax campaign, the better. So that will help with your strength as well. And strength just kind of helps Google like prioritize your campaign a little bit and work with the performance. Is it a good idea to disable the automatically created assets? Yes, absolutely. We're always open to testing, but just in our experience, the automatically created assets, they're not going to follow your brand guidelines as well. They're really not going to perform as well. Sometimes there's just completely inaccurate information in there. So if you are using these, just make sure to keep a very, very close eye on them. But we do recommend disabling them and using the custom assets. You know your language better than anyone else does. Do you recommend adding brand terms as negative keywords so the campaigns aren't competing against each other? This is again something that we can test, but we have seen more of that brand intent come through with PMax. So we don't have any strong recommendations at this point, other than, once again, it depends. We have kind of established that the competition between brand and PMax is not as high as we would have initially assumed. So as you saw with like the performance, there wasn't like a huge impact on our brand term search campaigns. So it's not really like a necessity. You can also use some of the settings that we mentioned, where you can like prioritize new customer acquisition or returning customers. So you could try it out, but we don't see it as a necessity, like at least from day one.
I would just add on to that. It really is going to depend on like your goal with your PMax campaign, right? So if your goal is to really just increase visibility and try to reach new customers, you're going to want to select that option to optimize for new customers. And then yeah, it might make sense to exclude your brand terms so that you're not just targeting people who are already familiar with your brand. Whereas if your goal is to like, really touch on returning users, then you certainly wouldn't want to exclude your brand terms from the PMax campaign.
So
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. I mean, if you really think about the logical aspect of it, your your guests are, if they're looking for a new hotel, if they're a new customer, they're like we've all talked about, they're likely looking at the market terms, hotel X and Y location. And so yeah, like it's been talked about, it does help to have that feature when you want to bid on higher customers. It's definitely not perfect when it comes to being able to not have any overlap with brand campaigns. So in that case, you do have to use the search terms features. Just keep in mind though, if you do end up excluding the brand themes or your brand keywords, it does pull back on the amount of overall, market, or I should say search term keywords that you want to negate. So just something to keep in mind, if you do end up adding a lot of brand keywords, it does decrease the amount of keywords you can add later. You can have a max of 100 keywords. So
That's another really good point. And it also reminded me that, part of your audience signals is adding those search themes as well. So, even though it's not directly a keyword, you can just tell PMax the kind of topics that people are looking for. So you can just not add your brand terms in there as well. And then PMax will be focusing more on those non-branded kind of themes and topics. Um, Another thing to note, specifically with brand terms, if you're one of the hotels that's using like a city name within your hotel name, I can't really come up with an example, but if it was a hotel in Boston and your name was Boston Hotel. So, just be wary of that as well, where there might be some negative impact just by adding those brand terms in there. One of my PMax campaigns is having a huge increase in impressions, but a really low conversion rate. What could be affecting that campaign? There are so many different factors. Obviously, all of the things that we just talked about with the different brand terms, prioritization. Um, but really, what this probably means is that you're reaching more higher funnel kind of people and your little higher level awareness. So you're going to want to add probably look at your search terms, see what people are getting impressions on, make sure that you're getting rid of any irrelevant search terms, maybe improving your assets to be a little better so that you're encouraging a conversion rate. Maybe there's something different on your website. Are you using the same landing page as your normal campaigns? Any other ideas from you two on this one?
Yeah, I would echo that, honestly, and it's kind of already touched on negating. I mean, I think you probably have some search terms that are becoming irrelevant. And we also touched up on search themes. You want to add as many as you can, because if you just let it kind of do its thing on its own without providing the data of the type of search terms that people are searching for, search themes that people are searching for, then it's probably going to spread across the board. Unfortunately, we don't have any control over the specific channels. There's also placement insights. If you were to be in your ads account and go up to the search bar, you could type placement insights and it'll pull up a report showing you specific sites that maybe your ads are going across on the display aspect of Google PMax. And I think you can download a report of that and then copy and paste those website URLs. Those tend to generate a lot of impressions. But just be mindful. I think what we usually suggest is like Outlook. Outlook is one of those that PMax tends to target a little bit more. There's a couple more websites, and I don't remember off the top of my head. I believe AOL.com tends to be a website that gets targeted. We suggest excluding that. But yeah, I would start with those placement insights reports too, and see if there's any that have really high impressions. Unfortunately, that's the only amount of metrics you have is just impressions. You don't know if they are converting or not. But I would start there and exclude the higher impression sites and see how performance goes from there. So.
That is another report that's kind of being rolled out. So if you can't find it in your account, you just might not have access yet.
Yeah.
And that also reminded me, we were just discussing Google's Performance Max, but Microsoft does have their own version. We haven't gone as deep with the Microsoft Performance Max, but all of the same principles really will apply to that channel. So if you are interested in Microsoft, that's also an option. So another question, how much does impression share play a role in PMax? Is it as important as brand and non-brand search campaigns, given PMax is running across multiple channels? So impression share is far less important with PMax. Impression share is a metric that really only applies to search placements. So you are going to see a lot lower impression share, but it's not going to be as important. Really for Performance Max, you're going to look at your more goal-focused metrics. So what kind of like clicks are you getting in CTR and ROAS and things like that. Impression share is still important, but it's not going to be a thorough enough snapshot of your visibility just because it is covering such a small section of your Performance Max campaign. Give us just one more minute in case anyone else has any questions. Any final questions?
It's all been great questions so far.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up then. Again, make sure to keep informed with our blogs. And again, the deck and the recording will be sent out afterwards. So the deck does include links to our full case study with more performance metrics, and there's plenty of other Performance Max content on our blog. So if you just, take a look, and we'd love to see you there. So I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, guys.